Here are more of the most disturbing mythical creatures to ever exist. Hopefully, first up is the Popobawa, a shape-shifting demon from the island of Zanzibar off the coast of Tanzania. Its name literally translates to batwing, which sounds almost cute until you learn what this thing actually does at night. The Popobawa is described as a one-eyed, bat-winged creature that can shift between animal and human form, and it doesn't just haunt villages for fun, it specifically targets people in their sleep, pinning them down and assaulting them, then forcing them to tell others about the encounter the next day. Refuse to talk about it, and the creature is said to come back angrier than before. So basically, this thing has built-in guaranteed word-of-mouth marketing, and honestly, that's more of a content strategy than half the channels on this platform have. Sightings of the Popobawa tend to spike during specific years, and entire villages have reported mass hysteria events where dozens of people claim to be visited in a single night. Some residents sleep outside in groups, lighting fires and staying huddled together, believing the creature is less likely to strike a crowd. Locals also recommend rubbing the body with a specific oil to ward it off, though the recipe changes depending on who you ask, which is either deeply reassuring or deeply not. Whatever the truth is, the Popobawa remains one of the only monsters in the world with something close to a modern paper trail. Police reports, newspaper columns, and government officials publicly commenting on the panic, which either means it's real or humans are just extremely good at scaring the hell out of each other. Probably the second one. Probably, if you're already regretting turning the lights off to watch this, don't worry, it gets so much worse from here, so maybe just leave a like now while you can still remember what comfort feels like. Next, from the deep swamps and bayous of Louisiana comes the Rougarou, the Cajun cousin of the werewolf, except somehow more depressing. Legend says the Rougarou was once a man cursed to transform into a wolf-like creature for 101 days, and the only way to break the curse is to draw blood from him and keep the secret for exactly 1 year. Tell anyone, and the curse jumps to you instead. So essentially, this is a monster built entirely out of small-town gossip mechanics, which, if you've ever lived somewhere with fewer than 3,000 people, you understand is genuinely terrifying. Cajun parents have used the Rougarou for generations the same way other cultures use the boogeyman. Misbehave, skip church, wander into the swamp alone, and the Rougarou might just be waiting. Some tellings even claim it hunts specifically for Catholics, who break Lent, stalking through the marshland on all fours, red eyes glowing through the fog, breathing loud enough to hear over the sound of the cicadas. It's less a monster with an origin story and more a cultural pressure valve that happens to have teeth. What's actually unsettling is how many hunters and fishermen in rural Louisiana still avoid certain parts of the bayou after dark, not because they necessarily believe in the Rougarou, but because, in their words, why take the chance? Respectable, deeply respectable, alright, you're two creatures deep and things have been relatively survivable so far. That ends now. The Adze is a vampiric being from West African folklore, specifically the Iwe people of Ghana and Togo, and it might be the single most disturbing shapeshifter on this list, because of exactly how it kills you in the wild. The Adze usually appears as a firefly, harmless, glowing, easy to ignore. But if it manages to slip into a house through a crack or keyhole, it transforms into a humanoid form and feeds on the blood of the person inside, usually a child, while they sleep. The victim wastes away slowly, and by the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's often too late. Here's the part that makes it so uniquely awful. The Adze isn't seen as an outside monster invading a home. In some traditions, it can possess a person directly, turning them into an unknowing witch who commits these acts without even realizing it. Which means the real horror of the Adze isn't the firefly. It's the idea that the danger might already be living under your roof, wearing a familiar face. If a firefly happens to get into your house tonight, I am so sorry in advance. And also, please don't kill the messenger, just kill the firefly. The traditional method of catching an Adze is to trap it while it's still in its firefly form, because once it fully transforms, it's basically unstoppable. So if you ever find yourself irrationally aggressive toward a bug at 2 a.m., trust the instinct. Moving on to Scandinavia, where the forests hide something called the Huldra, a creature that Norwegian and Swedish folklore describe as a stunningly beautiful woman from the front, with one small design flaw. From behind, she has either a hollowed-out back like a rotting tree trunk, or a full cow's tail she can't quite hide no matter how she stands. The Huldra lures lonely woodsmen deep into the forest with songs and promises of marriage, and if a man is charmed enough to actually go through with it, some tellings say she becomes a devoted, ordinary wife. Other tellings are far less generous. In the darker versions, any man who rejects a Huldra after realizing what she is doesn't get to just walk away. She curses him or drags him underground to her hidden world, beneath the roots, never to be seen again. Farmers in rural Norway used to leave out small offerings of food at the edge of the tree line, not out of kindness but out of pure self-preservation, hoping to stay on her good side. Because apparently even mythical forest spirits have expectations, and men have been failing to meet them for centuries. The unsettling part isn't really the tale. It's the idea that something can look completely normal, completely desirable, right up until the exact moment you're already in too deep to leave. We're halfway through, and I promise the tone is only going downhill. Hit subscribe now so future me can ruin more of your nights later. From the Philippines again, but somehow even worse than what we covered last time, there's the Tiyanak, a creature that disguises itself as an abandoned crying baby in the forest. Naturally, when a Filipino traveler hears an infant crying alone in the jungle, their instinct is to help. That instinct gets people killed. The moment the baby is picked up, it reveals its true form, a demonic fanged creature that tears into its rescuer with disturbing speed and strength for something that just seconds ago looked like a helpless newborn. Some legends describe the Tiyanak as the spirit of an unbaptized infant or a baby that died before it could be given a proper burial, cursed to wander and lure the living out of some twisted mix of grief and vengeance. Other versions claim it's created by an aswang, a shape-shifting witch, specifically to bait unsuspecting travelers. Either way, the lesson is the same. If you're ever deep in a Philippine forest and you hear a baby crying with absolutely no explanation for how it got there, maybe just don't. I know that sounds cold. I promise it's colder to get your throat torn out. All right, one more before the finale, and this one's less hides in the dark and more hides in plain sight, and knows exactly what you did. From Venezuela comes La Sayona, a vengeful spirit said to appear as a strikingly beautiful woman in a long white dress, wandering alone at night along rural roads. According to legend, she was once an ordinary woman named Melissa, devoted to her husband and newborn child, until she discovered her husband was having an affair with her own mother. In a fit of grief and rage, the story goes, she killed her mother, her husband, and in some versions, even her own child, before dying herself and being cursed to roam the earth forever, punishing unfaithful men in her place. Here's how it works. La Sayona specifically targets men who are out late at night cheating on their wives, or even just men who have a wandering eye. She appears alone on the road, apparently vulnerable, and asks for help or an escort home. If the man's intentions are anything less than pure, her face transforms mid-conversation into something rotted and skeletal, and she lets out a scream so violent it's said to drive men permanently insane, or in the more brutal tellings, tear them apart on the spot. Faithful men allegedly have nothing to fear, which statistically should make this one of the least deadly creatures on the list. And yet, reports of La Sayona sightings are still taken seriously in rural Venezuela today, especially in areas with a lot of, let's say, extracurricular nightlife. Taxi drivers and late-night travelers have specific routes they avoid, not because of traffic, but because of her. So if you're ever wandering a dark Venezuelan road late at night with a guilty conscience, my advice is simple. Just go home. Whatever you're doing, it's not worth what she does to men who get caught doing it. And finally, the one this whole video has quietly been building toward, the Wendigo. You've probably heard the name thrown around 100 times in horror movies and campfire stories, but the actual Algonquian legend is significantly darker than pop culture gives it credit for. The Wendigo isn't just a monster, it's a spirit of insatiable hunger and greed that possesses a human being, usually someone who has resorted to cannibalism to survive, often during brutal winters when starvation makes the unthinkable start to feel necessary. Once possessed, the person transforms both physically and spiritually into something no longer human. Gaunt, skeletal, with skin stretched tight over bone, and a hunger that can never ever be satisfied, no matter how much it consumes. That's the actual horror of the Wendigo. It's not the claws or the height or the antlers you see in modern depictions. It's the concept that the more it eats, the hungrier it gets, meaning the punishment for giving into desperation is an eternity of never being full again. Some Algonquian traditions treat Wendigo psychosis as a real diagnosable danger. Historical accounts describe entire communities intervening, sometimes fatally, when a member began showing signs of Wendigo-like hunger and detachment out of genuine fear of what they might become. Unlike a lot of folklore villains, the Wendigo was never really meant to entertain. It was meant to warn, a warning about greed, about isolation, about what happens to a person who consumes and never has enough. And honestly, in an era of doom scrolling and endless content consumption, maybe we're all a little more Wendigo than we'd like to admit, except, minus the cannibalism part, hopefully. So there you have it, 7 more creatures to keep you up at night, ranked from mildly concerning to actively rethinking every unexplained noise in your house. My channel is still small enough that I read literally every single comment, so tell me, out of these 7, which one would you least want to run into and why? I read all of them, so don't be shy. As always, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, farewell.